My name is David Leonardo. I am the CEO of Chillin' Nitrogen Ice Cream based down here in Miami, Florida, with 16 locations currently in 4 different states throughout the United States.
Great. How do you think that Chillin' stands out as a franchise?
The way we stand out as a franchise in what could be construed as somewhat of a congested space in the ice cream industry is that we actually are one of the only brands, if not the only brand, that's actually making ice cream right inside the store, 1 cup at a time for you. So we're making custom ice cream every single order, and we're using quite a bit of automation to allow us to provide that fresh ice cream right off the assembly line experience. So I think that's one of the biggest differences. I would say that for generations, we've been eating ice cream that's been made several weeks, if not a couple weeks at the quickest, before you're actually consuming it. It's been stored in freezers. Ice cream gets freezer burn, because of the freezer turning on and off over time. You have a lot of ice crystals, large ice crystals, and that's just the way we all used to consuming ice cream. So we really don't have, a lot of us don't have a concept for what actually fresh ice cream is supposed to taste like. But when it actually comes off the assembly line, it's actually a lot creamier. It's denser, so there's not as much air in it the way we make it, and you can just tell the difference in the quality. Just like we're used to now consuming a lot of food that is being made fresh in front of us at a restaurant, right? Instead of having it warmed up or taken from the fridge and thrown into a microwave. I think we all notice the difference when we eat something fresh that's cooked right in front of us. This is the same thing.
Wow, cool. I'm learning a lot already. I love it.
Yeah.
You mentioned automation. Can we touch on that for a second?
Yeah, sure. So the way we're able to kind of make the ice cream is by using liquid nitrogen. So liquid nitrogen is basically allowing us to flash freeze the cream right in the bowl. And so we're basically, we have a liquid nitrogen tank in our stores, and we control the dispensing of that liquid nitrogen. And we also control the mixing of the bowl. And so we have computer software that we've developed and control panels that basically automate that piece of the process. So you type in the order into the mixer, into the computer, and it actually knows how much liquid nitrogen to put into the bowl and how long to mix it for, reads the temperature, and then based on the temperature, it kind of tells you when you're about 95% there, and then the employee comes in and finishes off the rest. That's one piece that we use to automate. And then the other one is, because we're a custom ice cream shop, we're actually giving the consumer the option to select what base they want us to make their ice cream in. So since the ice cream is being made right in front of you, if you want your ice cream with regular cream, we'll make it. But if you decide you have a dietary restriction or allergy restriction and you want us to make it with coconut milk or almond milk or oat milk or yogurt or tart, we'll make your ice cream out of whatever base you select. And so we have actually a dispensing unit that we call Lola that actually allows you to type in the order, and it dispenses exactly the size and the base into the bowl. So we no longer have to depend on an employee to take that cream and take that base and pour it manually. So this is a big step for us because for those that are familiar with the restaurant space, waste is something that you always have to monitor, right? If I over pour, I'm giving them too much. If I under pour, I'm giving them too little. So you want to make sure that there's consistency throughout the ordering process and the execution. And so that's something that we've developed. It's proprietary to us. And so something we're really, really proud of in terms of leveraging technology to get us there.
Yeah, it just goes to show how impactful automation can be in any industry.
Yeah, it is. It's really amazing because while I've been talking about how great the taste is for fresh ice cream, one of the downsides that this industry has had in the past is just how long people have to wait for that ice cream. And what we've basically made a decision is that regardless of how good the ice cream is, a mother with 3 kids is not going to be willing to wait 20 minutes for ice cream to be made, right? And so we have our production down to about a little under 6 minutes, 5 minutes per ice cream. And so that's something that we take a lot of pride in. And so the automation is actually helping us get there. So some of our stores can produce north of 100 ice creams an hour. So that's really something that we take a lot of pride in. And it also kind of, it allows us also to go into higher volume areas that may not work traditionally for a brand like this that's making custom ice cream, because they're limited because of the bottleneck of production.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Let's step back a little bit. How can you share a little bit about your journey getting into the ice cream industry? I assume it goes restaurant industry and then to ice cream.
Yeah.
But yeah, how did you land up here?
Yeah. So this has been a long journey for me. But as you just mentioned, I started in the restaurant space, and as a young professional, found myself working for Burger King's headquarters down here in Miami. So they had their worldwide headquarters. My background's in finance and strategy, and started working in finance and strategy for them on a couple different things, and then got into more mergers and acquisitions and things of that nature, and then found myself in the franchise development department, really working with developers and investors, and really got a great crash course in franchising in general, right? Operations, finance, development, and leverage that experience to go then work for some other multinational brands like Wendy's and Arby's domestically and internationally. And so I've been really honing in my skills as a franchise executive for the past 20, 25 years, and became a father about 7 years ago, and decided that I really wanted to focus on staying close to home and not traveling as much. And I met the founders of Chillin'. They were a mom and pop business that had been growing this brand for 7 years before I joined them. And really their focus has been company stores. They owned all of the stores with the exception of maybe one or two licensees. And they had an interest in maybe considering franchising. And so I got introduced to them. We struck up a conversation about them wanting to franchise and my background in franchising. And I really felt like there was a really good partnership. And so we created an entity, and that's how the franchising division was born. And so, we're 5 years into this journey together, and we've grown it quite a bit since that time. Tripled the size of the store count, and more than doubled the size of the sales. And so we're really happy with the growth, but a lot of that comes with just a ton of work building the infrastructure, right? So we probably worked together 3 years before we even opened our first franchise stores. 2 years actually, but it takes a lot of work to kind of get there. And so we're very, very proud of where we're at.
And when did the automation technology come into play?
Yeah, so I would say that from the initial days of Chillin', the founder of Chillin', my partner Danny Golick, who really came up with the idea, but like many great ideas, that idea was born from visiting a small little ice cream shop in the northern part of Florida, where someone was pouring a base into a bowl and then pouring liquid nitrogen and whisking it with their hand and turning it into ice cream. So that is actually not a new invention. That's been around for 50 plus years. People making ice cream at home are using liquid nitrogen to make ice cream. All the liquid nitrogen is doing is freezing it, right? So it's not an ingredient in the product. It's just like a flame, a gas stove when you're cooking, right? And he came away from that saying, wow, I really think we could bring that to Miami. But because he's always been a tinkerer, he's always been a fan of technology, he started looking into ways that he could speed up the process. And so I would say that since the inception of the brand back in 2012, there has been an element of technology. But I would say that since I joined, and we've really accelerated a lot of that, because as we started bringing in franchisees and we started opening more stores, you can imagine that the need for technology. And another thing, that technology doesn't just allow you to provide more product and more accurate measurements, but it's really more about consistency. And if you want to grow a franchise, if you want to grow multiple units, if you want to scale whatever business you want to scale, consistency is really a key to that. So if I ever go to British Columbia and I open up a chillin, that ice cream that I make in that store has to taste exactly the same, like the ice cream that I have made for me here in a store that's 15 years old. And one of the things that helps us get there is the technology, right? And so that's something we continue to work on. Danny's our CTO and COO, and he's really the leader in regards to all of the technology advancements that we've made. And we're just really excited about all the stuff that we've been able to accomplish so far because of that.
Yeah, it's impressive. Very cool. It also gives you that little bit of control.
Yes.
To know that it's always going to come out the same. You can, in a way, control someone's experience.
Yeah.
Which is ideal.
And another thing we did was when we started rolling out the franchising, one of the other big elements of a franchise is providing support, right? And so now that we have stores in Texas, we have stores in, Nashville, we have stores in South Carolina and Orlando, we asked ourselves, look, it's going to be really hard to get on a plane and support all of these franchisees every single time something comes up. So part of our technology is we're able to kind of remote access into all of their technology and upgrade, fix the software, do everything remote, just like you would if you called an IT specialist and he was able to log into your computer. So that was a big piece of us deciding that we were ready to start opening stores in other states. The operation is a very, very simple operation once you learn how to control the technology piece. But that still doesn't take away the fact that we want to make sure that as we make more advancements in technology, that we could upgrade and push out new software upgrades to the stores. And that's something we've been able to do. And so we're very happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge piece of it, I suppose, that I didn't think of. That's
yeah, it's again, it all goes back to the consistency and making sure that as you scale up, people's experience are very consistent from one store to the next, right? Like each store might have a little nuance. Maybe one store is offering a certain ingredient that's unique to that part of the country, or they're collaborating with a certain, coffee brand that's making the coffee bean for the coffee ice cream or something like that. But in terms of the way the ice cream is made, that we want to be a very, very consistent experience regardless. And so when you walk into maybe other brands and you see just a huge amount of manual work that goes into making everything, that becomes hard to duplicate. That becomes hard to duplicate the more stores you open. And so when we take away that manual component, or take out the chef from the equation, it allows it so that regular high school and college kids can run your business, which is what we usually have.
Yeah, it would limit your ability to scale, at least scale.
That's right. And not that doesn't work for a lot of brands. There's a ton of brands that have amazing chefs and amazing culinary experts working for them. But for our size model and for what we're doing, we think it's a lot better to scale when you don't have that reliance on so much skilled labor.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit to maybe a little bit more on you and your career. What would you say is the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your career this far?
Wow. I'm going to have to say, that my biggest lesson is just you really can't get anywhere in your career without the help of others. And I think we live in a society, we live in a world where we're always celebrating these executives or these people who are extremely successful, and we make this assumption that these people were, pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and got there by themselves. And while, yes, I think the majority of people who've gotten to the level of the top of the pyramid, per se, in terms of corporate America, have pulled themselves up by the bootstrap, I would highly advise those that are trying to climb that ladder that you're really not going to be able to do it without the help of others. And so I've learned that to better collaborate with people. Collaboration works really well, to better network with people, friends in the industry, are going to last forever, even though your time in your company may not, And so I think, one of my biggest lessons is really working with others and trying to leverage the knowledge that exists with others. There was a time where I was very new to franchising, and I had the benefit of working for a global brand that had people with 30 plus years of experience that I got to learn under. And so now that I'm in a position where I have a lot of experience, it's giving back to those people who are trying to grow in the industry. And so I think ultimately, regardless of whatever industry you're in, I guarantee you that there's a lot of people out there that have helped you get to where you're going to be, and you're going to continue to depend on people to grow in your brand or in your company.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there is always somebody who is willing to help you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like realizing it or asking for that help.
Yeah, that's right. You hit it on the head. Feeling comfortable enough to ask, and even I think it gets harder as you grow up the ladder, right? And I think that's one thing that I've always been fortunate not to feel too proud to ask for help, regardless of the title I have. So I'm the first to say that I don't know a lot of things, and luckily my partners have been in this space, in the ice cream space, much longer than me. And so when I first sat down with them, it's really learning for the first couple of years. Even though I was in a position of power within this company, it's humbling yourself to know that while you may know certain aspects of franchising, you might not know anything about ice cream. And so you're learning about the operations of ice cream. You're learning about a lot of things. And so working in an environment where people are supportive of that, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. Great advice. On advice, what would you say is the best or maybe worst advice that you have received professionally or personally?
I think this continues to be the best advice I could give to others, and was some of the best advice that I had lived through and have received. And that is, sometimes the best deal is the one you say no to. And so I think we live in a world where we have to kind of push to get that big transaction, or push to get the big deal, or push to get. And so even though there's a lot of red flags pointing at us, and you could apply this to life, you could apply this to work, you could apply this to a million different things, is that you want something so bad that you are sometimes lose sight of some of the red flags that exist. And so I started my career in investment banking, and there was a managing director that had, they used to be tombstones, a collection of tombstones. You call them tombstones, but when you have a deal, you close a deal, you have a little plaque that gets created, and it tells you the size of the deal, it tells you who the advisory team was, the company that contracted you. And there was a tombstone that was empty on his stand. And he always told me, look, that's the deal that I didn't do, and I'm really proud of it. And so you sometimes have to walk away, and that could be applied to many things in life. But if I can give any advice to anyone, it's, drive to do the best you can, but never lose sight of when you should walk away from something. Maybe that's probably that's the one I could think of right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm making a mental note of that one to remind
There you
myself.
go. There you
go.
How long have you been with PeopleLinx?
About 5 years now, a little over 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I started as just a little cold calling sales rep, and slowly worked my way up, and it's been so fun.
Nice.
I attribute so many skills I have. I kind of called it like PeopleLinx University. It's where I work, it's
That's
great.
And you guys all get together every once in a while? Like, you guys travel together to meet together, like at a corporate office or something?
Yeah, last year we all met in Philly, and it was meeting a lot of the team members for the first time.
Yeah.
So we worked together and talked together every single day, and it was great to be face to face. One of our team members is in South Africa.
Wow.
And I chat with him every day, and it was so great to just sit down face to face. It was a different experience. It was really cool.
Yeah, you got a good team. I don't, obviously in the months that I've been working with them, that you can tell that the energy is a good energy in the office.
Yeah. I do consulting for a couple of companies now. And the PeopleLinx Monday morning management meeting is my favorite. No matter how serious the conversation is, Coop is always bringing a smile out of everyone.
Yeah.
And it's so cliche, but it does feel like a little family in a way.
A little side note, like I get on the phone with my partner who's kind of managing PeopleLinx relationship now. I kind of brought her in, and you see her kind of like get anxious and this and that, and Cooper's like, "Hey, don't worry about it, man." He's just like, "We got this." He's like to pump you up, like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Like, here's what we're gonna do." And it's like you never see him like flustered or anything. It's just like great energy.
Yeah. Always cool and collected.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Cool and collected. Let's talk maybe like organization. So you have many employees under you, many locations. What are some best practices that you recommend for staying organized and productive in such a fast-paced environment?
Yeah. This is actually the smallest company I've worked for in my career. So this is what can be construed as a startup. We are a startup. And so typical of a startup, you're wearing a lot of hats. And so we're very light staffed here at a corporate. And we did that on purpose because obviously, we're living off the royalties that are being generated from the stores. And so we want to make sure we stay lean and scale up the right way. And so what I've learned because of that is timing is actually more important than the partner you bring on board. And what I mean by that is I've learned with time that you have to first ask yourself if you have the resources to implement a great tool and you have the team in place to do that. Because just because something could benefit the company greatly doesn't mean your company's ready to absorb it, to implement it, and to deploy it. And so we've learned the hard way of some really good software or partners out there that we were just not ready to take on because the resources we had were just so thin that we just couldn't effectively deploy some of these products. And so some of the things that I would caution other people in is not so much to try to partner with the best partner. That's always something you should be doing, but to first ask yourself, given everything we are juggling right now, does it make sense to bring this person on now, or should you push this out? And so timing, and in an organization that is very small, there's a lot of timing that goes into place that's driven around resources, and it's driven around timing and of deployment of assets and deployment of capital as well. When you're working for a multinational, capital is a lot easier to kind of come by. But when you're working for a company as small as ours, that the partners were funding the company for a long period of time, you have to make these decisions based on all those factors. And I think that's something that I would tell you, or tell your listeners, or anyone listening to this, that it's something you should always take into account when you're building an organization and you're trying to bring on partners. The second thing, in terms of staying organized, you could see back here, I have I have boards by department in terms of what are the action items we want to accomplish throughout the year. And we kind of go through that on a weekly basis. We kind of tackle all of these on a weekly call. We tackle where we are in regards to some of these projects to make sure they're moving forward. And then the management or senior management, which is really, three of us, have a quarterly meeting, to just talk about in general, how are things going? How's the cash, situation? How's the growth situation? And so taking time out to kind of capture the moment and to kind of see where you're at, I think is also an extremely important piece, because you can get caught up in the day-to-day that next thing you know, you're 8 months in and you're like, whoa, what happened to the year? I'll give you a small example of that. We're in a situation over the last 36 months where inflation is just so much of the topic that we're experiencing. And our vendors, we have a lot of vendors and they're raising prices here and there and stuff. And so it's really important to take a step back and say, okay, how's our margins looking? From instead of waiting, 3 months to look at it, 4 months, we have now an accountant on staff that's giving us monthly P&Ls and doing all that so that we can make quicker decisions. Whereas historically, you kind of make a decision, towards the end of the year or towards the beginning of the year, and that's it. We're trying to make decisions a lot quicker. And so I would implore any early stage organization that your numbers, getting quick, accurate numbers to give you a better sense of where you're at in a quicker time frame is also something that can be a huge benefit to your company and where you are as an organization. So that's a couple things. Obviously, the action items and to do is something that keeps us focused. And then so when we get another idea, I usually point up at the board or I look at our action items and I say, is any of that more important than what we're doing here? And if it's not, then it gets pushed to the bottom. But it allows you to stay focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great. Not lose sight of the big picture, because the day-to-day can become a lot sometimes. And that's all you can just.
And again, it also, you're right. Yeah. And it just goes back to bandwidth, right? It goes back to bandwidth and understanding how many projects could you really literally take on, right? And so we've agreed that if we can do these 4 things by the end of the year, we're going to be really happy, right? And some of that is related to marketing, some of it's related to operations, some of it's related to franchise development, and some of it's related to finance, right? Boom. Those 4 categories, if we could do one, thing in each category, and by the end of the year, by the end of 2024, we'll be very happy. Everything else that gets presented to us, we have to ask ourselves, do we have the bandwidth to consider this now? And usually if the answer is no, we usually tell the vendor, or we push that idea to the bottom of the list and we say, how about for next year? Right now, as we grow as a company and I'm able to hire more people, I'm able to bring in more staff, guess what? Now we can add more projects to the list because we have more headcount, right? But at this point, we have, very handful of people working here. And if I add more responsibility to some of the stuff that's going on here, that's going to actually affect the existing work they're doing, right? And it's going to affect the timeline and everything. And so I try to be very sensitive to that.
Yeah, there's always going to be a backlog of projects, and that's okay.
Yeah, you're right. That's okay.
My on hold list, huge.
Yeah,
but it's probably always going to be huge because there's always.
Yeah, I like the way you just said that. I think there's always going to be a huge list of projects, and that's okay.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Yeah, that's right. I like that. I'm gonna borrow that.
I love it. Okay, to close it off, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, personally, professionally, what would that be?
Buy Bitcoin. I don't know. I would say for my younger self, continue doing what you're doing. You're on a right path. Professionally, personally, I've always been a late bloomer in a lot of things, right? So, I don't know, for some reason, but I've also been someone that I haven't let outside influences dictate how I feel about where I am. And so I think if I were to sit down with my younger self, I'd say, continue doing what you're doing. You're traveling, you're enjoying your life while you're pursuing your career. I don't know if I would change anything in where I am today, because it's just the way it had to be, and so I've had a lot of tough lessons. I've had some setbacks in my career. And I think if I were to tell anything to my younger self, this is what I would say. Your trajectory in your career and personal life is not a direct line. It's going to be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 steps back. And so I would tell them, stay the course, stay focused, make sure you keep working on yourself professionally, and personally, and don't be dissuaded. Don't take it too hard when you have professional setbacks or personal setbacks, because that's only going to make you better for the future. That's the best advice I could give my younger self.